At a packed luxury dealership grand reopening, cameras flashed as customers gathered around a rare performance SUV worth nearly $200,000. The dealership's celebrity owner stood beside the vehicle, confidently announcing that a mysterious electrical failure had turned it into a worthless display piece. 3 specialist shops had examined it. Engineers had reviewed it. The final verdict was brutal. Repairing it would cost over $200,000. Then a tired single dad named Ethan stepped forward. He wasn't a mechanic from a famous company. He wasn't wealthy. He was there with his young daughter, hoping to buy a used family car. The crowd laughed when Ethan quietly asked to inspect the SUV. The dealer smirked. The experts rolled their eyes. But 10 minutes later, Ethan pointed at a tiny component worth just $14. Suddenly, one retired engineer in the crowd went pale, because that tiny part revealed a secret nobody was supposed to find. And the dealership owner realized he had a much bigger problem than a broken SUV. Here's the continuation of part 1. The laughter spread across the showroom floor like a wave. Customers pulled out their phones. Salespeople exchanged amused looks. Even a few local reporters covering the dealership's grand reopening turned their cameras toward the man who had somehow become the center of attention. Ethan stood quietly beside his daughter, Ava, while the dealership owner folded his arms with a confident grin. "You think you found something my engineers missed?" the owner asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. More laughter followed. Ava lowered her eyes. She had seen this look before, the look people gave her father when they judged him before knowing him. Ethan didn't react. Instead, he crouched beside the disabled luxury SUV and studied the exposed wiring panel. His attention wasn't on the crowd. It wasn't even on the vehicle itself. It was on a tiny detail hidden behind a bundle of factory-installed cables. The owner shook his head. "Sir, this vehicle has been examined by 3 certified diagnostic teams. We've spent months trying to solve the problem." "I know," Ethan replied calmly. That answer surprised the owner. "You know?" Ethan nodded. "Because everyone has been looking at the symptoms." The crowd grew quieter, and the owner challenged. No one looked for the cause. Several technicians exchanged uncertain glances. Ethan carefully reached into the compartment and pointed toward a small component mounted near the control unit. One of the mechanics frowned. "That's impossible." "What is?" a customer asked. The mechanic stepped closer. For the first time, the confidence on his face disappeared. "That part shouldn't even be there." A murmur spread through the crowd. The owner immediately moved forward. "What do you mean it shouldn't be there?" The mechanic hesitated. "I'm saying this configuration doesn't match the official diagrams." Now, even the reporters were paying attention. Ethan slowly stood. "Exactly." The owner's smile vanished. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then a gray-haired man, standing near the back of the showroom, suddenly pushed through the crowd. People recognized him instantly. He was a retired engineer who had spent decades working with some of the biggest automotive manufacturers in the country. He stared at the component. His expression changed. Shock, then concern, then something far more unsettling. Fear. The engineer looked directly at Ethan. "Where did you learn to identify that?" The question hung in the air. Ethan glanced at the component one more time before answering. "I've seen this system before." The retired engineer's face went completely pale. Because according to official records, nobody outside a very small group was ever supposed to have seen it. And if Ethan was telling the truth, the broken SUV in front of them wasn't just a vehicle at all. A heavy silence settled over the showroom. The crowd that had been laughing only minutes earlier now watched Ethan with growing curiosity. Camera phones remained raised. Reporters edged closer. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. The dealership owner forced a smile. "That's enough," he said. "This has become a distraction from today's event." But the retired engineer didn't move his eyes from Ethan. "You said you've seen this system before," he said carefully. "Where?" Ethan hesitated. There were parts of his past he rarely discussed, especially in public. Before he could answer, 2 security guards approached. "Sir, we're going to need you to step away from the vehicle." Ava immediately grabbed her father's arm. The nervousness in her eyes was impossible to miss. Ethan gently squeezed her hand. "It's okay." The owner pointed toward the exit. This is private property. You've made your point. The crowd reacted with disappointed murmurs. They could sense there was more to the story. The retired engineer frowned. Actually, I'd like to hear what he has to say. That statement surprised everyone, the owner included. For the first time, the retired engineer's support shifted attention away from the dealership and toward Ethan. One of the reporters raised a microphone. Sir, do you believe this man may have found something significant? The engineer answered without hesitation. I believe he noticed something every diagnostic team overlooked. The showroom erupted with whispers. The owner's jaw tightened. Ethan could feel the pressure building from every direction. The owner wanted him gone. The engineer wanted answers. The crowd wanted a spectacle. And Ava simply wanted her father to be okay. Ethan looked back toward the exposed compartment. Something still bothered him. The strange component was important, but it wasn't the real mystery. The real mystery was why someone had installed it in the first place. Slowly, he knelt beside the vehicle again. A technician stepped forward. What are you doing now? Checking a theory. The technician rolled his eyes. Based on what? Ethan pointed toward a small connector hidden beneath another panel. Based on the fact that this system was designed to communicate with something that isn't here anymore. The mechanic blinked. What? Several experts hurried closer. The retired engineer suddenly crouched beside Ethan. His eyes widened. He could see it now. A missing connection. A missing module. A missing piece that should have been impossible to remove without leaving evidence. The engineer looked up at Ethan. You think somebody altered this vehicle? I don't think, Ethan replied quietly. I know. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a replacement component he had purchased years earlier for less than $14. The moment the retired engineer saw it, he stood up so quickly he nearly stumbled backward. Because he knew exactly what that tiny part was connected to. And if Ethan installed it, the vehicle might reveal something the dealership owner desperately wanted to keep hidden. The retired engineer's reaction did not go unnoticed. Every eye in the showroom shifted between him and the tiny component resting in Ethan's hand. The dealership owner stepped forward immediately. Stop. His voice was sharper than before. Nobody laughed this time. Ethan slowly looked up. What? The owner forced a calm expression, but tension was beginning to show. Because this vehicle belongs to the dealership. No one knows it is the repairs. A reporter raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Several people nodded. The owner's concerns seemed far greater than what a $14 part should justify. The retired engineer crossed his arms. Let him continue. The owner turned toward him. You don't have authority here. No, the engineer replied. But I have 38 years of experience. And right now, I'm more interested in the truth than protecting someone's reputation. Nobody wanted the mystery buried again. One reporter raised her microphone. Why are you so worried about a storage case? The owner didn't answer. That answer alone spoke volumes. Ethan slowly reached into the compartment and carefully lifted the metal case free. It was heavier than expected. Its surface was scratched and worn, as though it had been hidden and forgotten for a very long time. The retired engineer leaned closer. His eyes immediately found something engraved near the handle. A number. A project designation. The same designation that appeared on the label Ethan had discovered moments earlier. The engineer exhaled slowly. It's real. The crowd erupted again. The maintenance employee looked stunned. You mean the rumors were true? The engineer nodded. I think they were. Ethan turned the case over. Unlike the vehicle itself, the case wasn't locked. It looked as though whoever hid it had expected someone to eventually find it. Or perhaps they never had the chance to come back. The owner suddenly stepped forward. You have no legal right to open that. His voice was louder now. More desperate. More emotional. The retired engineer looked directly at him. Then why are you afraid of what's inside? The owner had no answer. That silence made the room even quieter. Ethan glanced at Ava. She gave a small nod. The simple gesture reminded him why he always tried to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. Slowly, he released the latches. Click, click. The sound echoed through the showroom. Every camera pointed toward the case. Every phone recorded. Every breath seemed to stop. Ethan lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of documents, technical diagrams, engineering reports, photographs, data drives, and one sealed envelope. The engineer's hands trembled slightly as he picked up a report from the top of the stack. His eyes widened, then widened even further. "This changes everything." "What is it?" a reporter asked. The engineer flipped through several pages. "The project worked." The crowd gasped. The maintenance employee shook his head. "That can't be right." The engineer pointed to test results, performance records, certification approvals. Every document told the same story. The technology had succeeded. Completely. Ethan frowned. Then why was it abandoned? Nobody answered immediately, because that question created an even bigger mystery. If the project worked, why had it disappeared? Why had records been altered? Why had the SUV been disabled? And why had millions of dollars of technology been hidden inside a vehicle and forgotten? The retired engineer continued reading. Then suddenly he stopped. A single page near the bottom had caught his attention. His expression changed instantly. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger. "What?" Ethan asked. The engineer handed him the document. It wasn't an engineering report. It wasn't technical data. It was a list of names. Dozens of names. Former employees, engineers, people connected to the project. Several names had handwritten notes beside them. Some had been marked responsible for the project's public failure. The maintenance employee looked over Ethan's shoulder. His face turned pale. "My name is on that list." The engineer's jaw tightened. "So is mine." Ethan scanned the page. Something wasn't right. Every person on the list appeared to have been blamed for mistakes that, according to the documents in the case, never actually happened. The project hadn't failed. Yet someone had made sure these people carried the blame anyway. Then Ethan reached the final page in the folder. At the bottom was a signature. The moment he saw it, he looked up at the dealership owner. The entire showroom followed his gaze, because the signature belonged to someone who had personally approved the fall story years ago. And that person was standing right in front of them. The moment the crowd realized where Ethan was looking, hundreds of eyes turned toward the dealership owner. The atmosphere inside the showroom changed instantly. This was no longer a curiosity, no longer a strange repair story, no longer a debate about a broken luxury SUV. Now it was about accountability. The owner stared at the document in Ethan's hand. For the first time all day, he looked completely cornered. "You're misunderstanding what you're reading," he said. But his voice lacked confidence. The retired engineer stepped forward. "No, we understand it perfectly." He held up several reports from the case. The maintenance employee nodded. And yet dozens of people were blamed when it supposedly failed. The crowd began murmuring again. Reporters were already transmitting updates to their newsrooms. Phones remained raised. The story was spreading far beyond the showroom. Ethan looked down at the list of names. Each name represented a career, a family, a future, people who had spent years believing they were responsible for a disaster that apparently never existed. Ava quietly tugged on his sleeve. Did they all lose their jobs? The question hit harder than anyone expected. The engineer lowered his eyes. Many of them did. The room fell silent. The owner immediately tried to regain control. Those decisions were made years ago. You don't know the full story. Then tell us, Ethan replied. The owner opened his mouth, then stopped, because he couldn't. The documents were saying something very different. Ethan continued sorting through the contents of the case. Most of the material focused on technical development, testing records, financial reports, internal communications. Then he found something unusual, a small encrypted data drive. Unlike the paperwork, it had been sealed inside its own protective sleeve. The retired engineer noticed it immediately. His eyes narrowed. That's interesting. The maintenance employee leaned closer. What is it? The engineer exhaled slowly. If the documents explain what happened publicly, that drive may explain what happened privately. A chill seemed to move through the crowd. The owner took an involuntary step backward. Everyone noticed. Ethan noticed too. The reaction spoke louder than any words. Whatever was stored on the drive mattered. And as everyone turned toward the dealership owner once again, a notification suddenly appeared on the computer screen. A new message had just been received. The sender's name made Ethan's eyes widen. Because it belonged to the original inventor of the technology, someone everyone believed had disappeared years ago. The showroom froze. For a moment, nobody seemed to breathe. The notification remained on the screen, glowing beneath the video that had already shattered years of assumptions. That's impossible. The maintenance employee stared at the sender's name, but he vanished after the project ended. One of the reporters quickly searched through old records on her phone. According to every public source she could find, the inventor had disappeared from the industry shortly after the project's supposed failure. No interviews, no public appearances, nothing. Yet somehow a message from him had just arrived. Ethan clicked it. The room fell silent once again. A short video began playing. The face that appeared on screen looked older than the photographs attached to the project files, but there was no doubt it was him. The original inventor. The man whose work had been hidden inside the SUV. His eyes looked tired but determined. "If you're watching this," he began, then someone finally found the evidence. The crowd listened carefully. "For years I stayed silent, because I believed the truth would eventually come out on its own." He paused. It didn't. The room remained completely still. The inventor explained how the technology had successfully completed every major benchmark. He described meetings where executives debated what to do with it. And then he confirmed what the earlier recording had suggested. The project was never canceled because it failed. Gasps spread through the audience. Several former employees, standing near the back of the showroom, wiped tears from their eyes. For years they had blamed themselves. For years they had carried the weight of a failure that never existed. The inventor continued. Many good people lost their careers protecting a lie they didn't even know existed. The retired engineer lowered his head. The maintenance employee's eyes filled with emotion. Then the inventor smiled slightly. But there is one thing they never expected. The crowd leaned closer. The technology was never destroyed. A wave of shock swept through the room. Ethan glanced toward the SUV. The inventor pointed directly toward the camera. "If the vehicle is still operational, all it needs is the original interface component." Ethan slowly reached into his pocket. The $14 replacement part. The same part everyone had mocked earlier. The inventor nodded on the screen, as if speaking directly to him. "Install it." The room erupted with anticipation. The dealership owner looked defeated. He knew what was coming. The retired engineer looked at Ethan. The maintenance employee looked at Ethan. Ava smiled proudly at her father. Because after everything they had uncovered, the entire mystery now came down to a tiny piece worth $14. And everyone in the showroom wanted to see whether it would actually work. The entire showroom seemed to lean forward at once. Hundreds of people watched as Ethan walked back toward the SUV. The laughter that had greeted him earlier was gone. The skepticism was gone. Now, there was only anticipation. The tiny replacement component rested in his palm. $14. After months of failed diagnostics, endless reports, expert consultations, and a repair estimate exceeding $200,000, everything had somehow led back to this simple piece. Ethan knelt beside the open compartment. The retired engineer stood close enough to observe every movement. The maintenance employee watched silently. Even the reporters stopped talking. Nobody wanted to miss a second. Ethan carefully aligned the component. For a moment, he paused. Not because he was uncertain, because he understood what this moment meant. If the inventor was right, years of deception were about to collapse. If he was wrong, the mystery would remain unsolved. Ava stepped beside him. "You've got this, Dad." Ethan smiled. Then he installed the part. Click. The sound was small, almost insignificant, yet it echoed through the silent showroom. Nothing happened. 1 second passed, then 2, then 3. A few nervous glances spread through the crowd. The dealership owner looked hopeful for the first time in hours. Maybe nothing would happen after all. Then a soft tone sounded from inside the SUV. Beep. The dashboard illuminated. A second later, additional systems activated. Display screens flickered to life. Status indicators appeared across the console. The showroom erupted. People gasped. Others cheered. Several reporters nearly dropped their microphones. The retired engineer stared in disbelief. "It's working." The maintenance employee laughed aloud. "It's actually working." But Ethan wasn't looking at the dashboard. He was watching the main system display. New information was appearing. Information nobody had seen before. The prototype interface. Years of hidden technology suddenly revealed itself on the screen. Diagnostic data streamed across multiple windows. Performance analytics loaded. Testing records synchronized. The system wasn't merely functional. It was extraordinary. The retired engineer shook his head slowly. This was decades ahead of its time. The crowd continued reacting as more features became visible. Every news screen confirmed the same thing. The inventor had been telling the truth. The technology had worked all along. Ava looked around the room. The same people who had laughed at her father were now staring at him with admiration. For a brief moment, she felt something she hadn't felt all day. Pride. Pure pride. Then another notification appeared on the display. This one wasn't from the inventor. It was a live incoming video call. The crowd fell silent again. Ethan accepted it. A distinguished older man appeared on screen. Several people recognized him immediately. He was one of the country's most respected investors and technology entrepreneurs. He had been quietly watching the live stream coverage from another city. "I've seen enough," the investor said. His eyes remained fixed on Ethan. "You solved in one afternoon what highly paid consultants failed to solve for years." The retired engineer smiled. The investor continued. "I have spent the last hour reviewing the evidence being released." The dealership owner lowered his head. There was nothing left to deny. The truth was public. The documents were public. The recordings were public. And now the technology itself was functioning in front of hundreds of witnesses. The investor looked directly at Ethan. "I'd like to make you an offer." The crowd immediately grew quiet. Ethan remained calm. "What kind of offer?" The investor smiled. "The kind that changes lives." Ava's eyes widened. The retired engineer exchanged a knowing glance with a maintenance employee. Because after everything that happened, after every mystery, every secret, every lie, and every revelation, it seemed the story wasn't ending with a repaired SUV. It was beginning with an opportunity nobody in that showroom had seen coming. And Ethan was about to discover just how much a $14 part could be worth.